Query and Company.
I'm going to be keeping you company for the next few hours.
You are not going to believe the company.
This company.
You're going to bankrupt your mama's company?
At least I have the radio to keep me company.
On 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
So here we are. There are like 4 times out of the year where I think to myself that it's time to play some Andy Williams. It's the most wonderful time of the year. The month of May, that applies. The week going into Christmas, obviously that applies. And does it not apply today?
Maybe, does it ever?
March Madness, and I'm telling you, it is so far and so big and so above and beyond just basketball. I think for so many people, March Madness is nostalgic, it's fun, like there's just such a magic to it because it literally feels like the one thing that unifies everybody, right? Office pools and friend pools and trips and all of it. All of it comes into play. And everybody finds their Cinderella, the team that's going to be this year's Loyola Marymount, this year's Northern Iowa, this year's Butler Bulldogs, this year's St. Mary's. VCU, right? Or whatever. There are always players that become stars in March Madness. And for 2 weeks, the sun shines upon them and they are household names. And then by the time the nets are being cut down, you've completely forgotten about them until you see them in one shining moment. You're like, oh, yeah, I forgot about that guy. It was like 2 weeks ago. Like, that's what March Madness is. It's the best. It's tradition-laden. It's the greatest. And the brackets are out. And yes, indeed, by popular demand, it is true. It is true that this is the essentially third show that I've done talking about March Madness here in Indianapolis. But we've had rousing success with the other 2 shows that I've done with this tradition like no other. I would like for people to let me know, and certainly you can, as always, text me. My name is Jake Query, and my cell phone number is 317-523-9288. That's the 317 area code. 523-9288. Saw a guy last night at dinner at Union Jack that goes, man, you give your number out on the air. That's insane. I said, I've never been burnt by it. I love giving my number out because I like hearing from people. But
my name's Jimmy Cook. I don't love you all like that.
Jimmy's not giving his number out.
You can tweet at me, though. I'll gladly go back and forth with you there.
But send me a text and tell me, because I've tried to tell Jimmy and Eddie here. I'm like, guys, I'm telling you, I've done this on 2 different shows, and it's a rousing success every single year. We do 2 things on this show that are traditions like no other. Number 1, at least one of us has a cough. And number 2, this tradition that I'm talking about in the month of March for March Madness. And we're going to carry it on this year, including probably today, we will begin with 1 round of what it is that I'm talking about.
I'm excited because this is my first time being a part of this.
Nate already chiming in. He's correct. Jake, it's the numbers game. Yes. That is correct. The numbers game. Now, we don't have any official prizes, but I, Jake Query, because I am somebody that I care about all of our listeners. In the past, Darnell has won, and we had fabulous prizes for restaurants around town to give away. I have decided we have no official prizes to give away, so I'm going to do this. Here's how the numbers game works. We're not doing it right now, but we will do it over the course of this week. You call into this program, you give me a number. You give me a random number. It could be your birthday, it could be your age, it could be your favorite number, your lucky number, whatever it might be. Give me a number. I have in front of me all 64 teams, so that does include the play-in games, so somebody gets a bonus of 2 teams. You give me a number 1 through 64, you get a team assigned to that number, randomly assigned. That is your team. You are assigned that team. That is your team to root for. This gives everybody a rooting interest. We all want to see Purdue do well, okay? This gives everybody a rooting interest. There are 3 ways to win. You get the team that wins the national championship. No, don't call in now. People are already calling in now. We're not doing it now. We're not doing the numbers game now, but I told these guys, people go crazy for the numbers game. You can get the national champion. You get the double-digit seed to advance the furthest. I have my own set of tiebreakers for that. So, for example, if there are 2 10 seeds that both advance to the regional finals, the one that loses to the higher seed, the better seed, is tiebreaker 1, then how close it is. It's a series of tiebreakers. Third, if you get the team that gets blown out by the largest margin of any blowout game in the tournament, then you are a winner. 3 winners. And if you are a winner, you will become the proud owner of a brand new baseball cap of the team with which you were assigned.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
And I'm not going to dox anybody here, but I'm curious because I'm interested to see how this falls out. Did you have an outside firm randomize the numbers for you?
Yes. Valerie is our official number assigner.
I wasn't sure if that was like an accident or if that was a tradition that she's a part of it.
Valerie, as part of tradition, listener Valerie always assigns through her. She has a fabulous system that she uses, and Valerie, as a result, is the only person that gets to select her team. Valerie has Duke.
All right.
Valerie's a Duke fan. Valerie has been assigned Duke. So the
Thank
other
you,
teams
Valerie.
are all available. Now, as for the bracket themselves, Indiana State got screwed. There's a lot to talk about the course of today, but let's begin by talking about the NCAA tournament and the brackets as they come out. The first observations. Number 1, Purdue is not the number 1 seed in the tournament. That honor belongs to Connecticut. But I thought Purdue got a pretty favorable draw. I was really worried about that second-round matchup, the 8-9 game. Utah State and TCU. Don't know a lot about either of them, but it doesn't feel like they have the frantic levels. I mean, Jamie Dixon, I think, is more of kind of a slow it down kind of. I think that's a good matchup for Purdue in round number 2.
I will be honest with you, and I've only seen a little bit of TCU on the Big 12 side of things. But for the Horned Frogs, Emmanuel Miller, Jameer Nelson, to name a few, and Jay Wright highlighted this on the selection show yesterday. They are quick, they're fast, and they have athletic guard play. Those are the 3 buzzwords that you do not want to hear on any side of the floor, historically speaking, for Purdue in the NCAA tournament. That has generally been the kryptonite for Matt Painter. So I'm not saying that is a clear and obvious, like, oh, yeah, you got to pick the 8-9 like you were highlighting, Jake. But if it is TCU, that'll be a very fascinating early test for the Boilermakers because of the fact they have pretty solid guard play.
Do they have length?
Not enough to scare them, no.
Do they have size inside?
Not really, just the guards. But again, that's sometimes all it's
I don't
taken.
mean that defiantly. I'm
Right,
asking, genuinely curious. But I thought Purdue got a pretty good draw. I think Tennessee's really good. Kansas is pretty up and down because you always look at, like, who are the 2-3s in your region, right?
Ernest Uday Jr., I don't know if I'm saying that name right, is their center. He's 6'11".
You know his dad's name?
Ernest Uday.
That's
Senior.
correct. Yes, that's correct. I don't understand the following. I am admittedly not the sharpest tool in the shed, and I am definitely an older soul. I don't really buy into, the ARP, WARTEC, VORTEC, VTEC, DMOAL, and all that stats of sports. I know that that's where it's gone. I get it. But seemingly, these things, my hesitation with the advanced statistics, I know and I get it. I get that they have a purpose. And I get that more coaches use them than probably don't. I understand all of that. But my cynicism is rooted in this. I remember the first of these metrics that were used was the Sagarin ratings. Sagarin ratings was the end-all, be-all. And Jeff Sagarin came up with a computerized basketball game called Hoops that was fabulous. I loved playing it like no tomorrow. But that was the end-all, be-all. And like USA Today started printing the Sagarin ratings, and then once everybody got invested in the Sagarin ratings, then it was like, yeah, they don't use those much anymore. Now they go more so with the
RPI was the big one. For a while.
RPI was big for a while there, right?
Mm-hmm.
RPI was everything. Wow, the Sagarin, that's totally old news, man. Like, get on board. RPI is where it's at. And that was big until then RPI was replaced by another one. I can't remember what it was called, but it was like RPI, but it was like PPI or PP. I don't know what it was. But that was only big for a while because then KenPom came along. That was the big one. You got to go with the KenPom. Now, you see that guy over there? We invite him every year out of tradition, but don't tell anybody. He still goes with the KenPom. Shh, I know. Yeah, he's told. I mean, look at his shoes. You know what I mean? So the KenPom then suddenly became like the Sony Disc Walkman, and it was no longer cool, right?
I skipped your timeline, by the way. RPI is further along, but I continue.
But you get what I'm saying.
Yes, correct.
Now it's the net.
Yes.
The net's the big thing. That's the NCAA evaluation tracker. We got to believe in everything's about the net. Got to go with the net. Nothing but net, baby. It's March. Nothing but net. All I believe in is net. It doesn't matter what the rankings say. I know that the media and the coaches polls have that team as 27, but that is the net has them 14. I go by the net. The net's everything. It's the end all be all. Now, the NCAA selection committee, which is the first part of that name is NCAA, right? So one would think that they work in coordination with the NCAA equivalency test or whatever the hell it's called, right? So Indiana State has a net of 29.
And just to dumb it down a little further, net replaced RPI. RPI was solely focused on winning percentage. Then the NCAA jumped in, and it focuses on winning percentage, net does, but also it goes by individual game results, strength of schedule, where the game was played, road, home, neutral, offensive and defense efficiency, and the quality of wins and losses mixed up into one big formula. So in theory, it was supposed to be, as you've highlighted, an improved version of the previous thing of RPI.
How many teams get an at-large invitation to the NCAA tournament?
32. Well, I might botch it with the play-in, but there's 32 auto qualifiers and 32 at large, or 36 at large.
So there are 32 teams that are invited in. So one would think that if you're in the top 32 in the net, you're safe.
Correct.
Especially considering that some of those teams that are in the top 32 in the net are taking the automatic because they won their conference tournament. So therefore, even more. You see what I'm saying?
Yep. For the last 5 to 6 years, that's been the case.
What was Indiana State's net ranking?
29.
And they didn't get in.
They did not get in. First time anybody inside of that.
So the NCAA selection committee defied their own formula.
Correct. Their logic was that they had so many resumes that were close together. They started going by non-conference strength of schedule. And if you're a school like Indiana State, you're not winning that battle.
The problem for Indiana State is not only the fact that their coach probably now is about to go to St. Louis and they're going to lose their roster, but the problem for Indiana State is it's difficult for like a Moval team or a Horizon League team to get anybody to come play them.
Yes,
right?
Correct. Incredibly hard for any
Indiana
mid-major.
State has to go on the road and play Michigan State and play well, right?
Yep. And the other unfortunate part for Indiana State in this instance, and we talked about this last week, yes, did the Sycamores shoot themselves in the foot by not winning the Moval? Obviously. Drake winning that and taking away the auto bid really put them behind the 8 ball. But if you listen to what the committee said yesterday, even though it's still unfair, and I'm on the board of Indiana State got screwed, there were so many bid stealers. I don't remember what the final total was, Jake, but at one point it was 18 number 1 seeds in conference tournaments across college basketball lost. There were bid thieves all over the place. No worse than NC State and Oregon. Those two, among others, really hurt a lot of teams' chances, including Indiana State. When I look at the last 4 in, they should have been in over Virginia. They should have been in over Colorado State. Based on all the metrics the NCAA says matters, they should have gotten in. They did not.
And that's my thing, Jimmy. Look, I'm standing up for Indiana State for 2 reasons here. Number 1, because it's Indiana State, right? Yep. I live in Indiana.
Yep.
And number 2, because research says otherwise in what I'm about to say, okay? The NCAA tournament was – the greatness of the NCAA tournament was rooted in Cinderella. People love the NCAA tournament because we love the stories of the little guy that comes in and tries to do it, right? We love to see Goliath slayed. We love to see the storylines of the little school and
Give me a little Bryce Drew Valpo action.
correct. People love it.
Yeah.
However, television ratings will tell you that people only love that for one weekend. St. Mary's was an unbelievable story. UMBC was an unbelievable story. Now, granted, they only won one game. Valpo with Bryce Drew was an unbelievable story, right? But when little schools pull the upset and make it into the second weekend, what we find then, George Mason was an unbelievable story. But once they get into the truly white-knuckle games for regional championships and then Final Fours, people then become hesitant to watch because they're like, I don't know. I loved watching that story of the little puppy that was playing with the Tiger Cubs, but the Tigers are all grown up now. And that video makes me uncomfortable because I don't know what those Tigers are going to do.
It's like
and it's the same thing, right? People are like, look, Valpo's great that they got to the Elite Eight.
Yeah.
But now that they're playing Kentucky, I want to look away.
It's like the auditions for a talent show, like American Idol or like
That's
America's
a very
Got
good way of
Talent.
saying it.
You love those first kind of hokey, corny acts, but then when you get into the real stuff, it's like, why is this guy that can swallow toothpicks still here? I don't understand what we're doing.
That is a very good way of saying it. That is a perfect way of saying it. So for that reason, the other reason I'm taking up the cause for Indiana State is because if you just look at the bracket, okay, and you look at the double-digit seeds that Colorado State, Virginia, North Carolina State's an auto, so that's a bad example. Did UAB win their conference tournament?
They did.
Yeah. Michigan State's another team I'd throw in there.
Okay, Michigan State, Mississippi State. Did they win? They didn't win the SEC, did they? Didn't Auburn win the SEC?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, so Mississippi, I'll take Mississippi State.
But they beat Mississippi State,
as an
right?
example. Correct. But what I'm saying is if those schools get hot as an 11 and they get to the Elite Eight or they get to the Sweet 16, okay. I mean, they're a big-time Power 5 school. Nothing exciting. Indiana State gives the NCAA tournament its opportunity to continue to cement itself. Yes, the ratings would falter by the time they get into the Elite Eight. But if Indiana State got in and created a little havoc by winning a game or two, which they very well could have done, then the NCAA tournament is living up to the billing that has made it a multi-billion-dollar industry in the first 4 days.
Your numbers game, right? We've got the numbers game coming up. I want to throw some numbers at you real quick. Tell me which one doesn't belong. 27, 25, 54, 36, 29.
Yeah, 54.
That's Virginia's net. Even if we're getting lost in the minutia of analytics and advanced metrics, that's 25 spots. I get it. Virginia, I don't remember how far they went. Eddie, do you remember how far in the ACC? Did they lose in the second round?
But they also had 3 wins against teams in the field.
And I get that aspect.
That are all single digits.
So maybe that's enough. Maybe that's enough to carry the day. But Virginia's been there before. They've won a national title this decade, right? Or at least in the last 5 years. And that's your separator. You make a big deal about the net, the whole. I can get behind Colorado State, I guess, because there's 7 spots differentiating between net. But 25 spots just because Indiana State lost in their conference championship game, but Virginia gets bounced. I think they got bounced by NC State in the ACC tournament, and that's enough. It's just frustrating. And I don't know. I had a debate about this with a buddy the other day. I don't know if expansion fixes this because then you have a 26 seed.
No.
Right. I don't know what the solution is. I don't know what the solution is other than, hey, sorry. Good luck next year.
Jimmy, part of the magic of the tournament is exactly this, right?
Sure. And somebody said it on the selection show yesterday. We'll talk about this. Locally, it'll matter a couple more days, but nationally, they gripe about who didn't get in for the first day and a half, and then everybody forgets about it.
Correct. Now, the other thing is this. And by the way, Don Fisher is going to join us on the program today, coming up about 10 minutes from now. Mike DeCourcy will join us at 1 o'clock. Mike Chappell in the 2 o'clock hour, along with LaPhonso Ellis, who will offer some perspective and talk about his NCAA tournament. He appeared in 2 of them with the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. He will join the program at 2:30, and we will have numbers to give away. The other thing about yesterday, to me that is concerning is the wrong word, but I'm going to predict something here if things don't change. The National Invitational Tournament, the NIT, which has been a great tournament for a very, very long time, and at one time was the prioritized tournament over the NCAA tournament. But the NIT, if the NCAA doesn't do something here, is going to be in trouble because you already have teams, Indiana being one. I'm trying to think of another one that it was just on the top of my head. That
St. John's.
St. John's, thank you, with Rick Pitino.
Didn't North Carolina in the past
decline the invitation, right?
Yeah.
The reason they declined the invitation now, I don't know about North Carolina, but the reason this year that Indiana and North Carolina State, for example, both declined the invitation is because they want to get a head start on the transfer portal. Now, in the past, Minnesota comes to mind. There was a year where Minnesota was a young, rising team that had like freshmen and sophomores and took their lumps and were like 18 and 12 and narrowly missed the NCAA tournament. So they went into the NIT and got their feet wet of learning how to play in a tournament and continuing with a month long of practices and tournament games and high stakes and et cetera. And that really helped Minnesota. And they became a tournament team after that. That was the idea of the NIT, is if you had a team that was still building, it was a key part of your building blocks. Number one, with the transfer portal now, that probably goes out the window because a team now that narrowly misses the NCAA tournament is going to be filled with guys on the roster that are like, you know what, I'm not going to sit around and rebuild this thing. I'm gone because I got a scholarship offer to go play at St. Louis with my new head coach.
North Carolina
that's going over there.
North Carolina did last year, by the way.
Okay.
That's like a lot of people are pointing to that as kind of like a turning point moment for, hey, they were preseason number one last year. They didn't make the dance, and they said, now we're good.
Okay, now, the other thing is this. If the portal, if this is the case, the NCAA, not that it, maybe they need to come up with legalized tampering, but the NCAA needs to come up with a timeline that says transfer portal conversations, et cetera, are not allowed to happen until after such and such a date when both tournaments have ended. Now, we're all smart. We're all big boys and girls. We're all smart enough to know. You can come up with that rule, and it's going to apply to everybody except for like Kentucky, Alabama, whatever. They're going to they're going to get an inch, take a mile, right? I get it. But the portal, if the off-season priority becomes rebuilding your roster versus building the one you currently have, that is really bad news for the National Invitational Tournament, or the not invited tournament, as some people call it. Now, the other question I have about the bracket is this. Give me the school or schools, the three, that you think the least amount of people in the United States could tell you what state it's located in.
McNeese.
Good one.
Sanford.
Yes, that was going to be my second. And
Sanford's in Alabama, right? Isn't that in Birmingham?
I believe so, yes. And then
Longwood? Where's Longwood?
Yeah, that would be up there.
There's a joke in there somewhere that I'm not going to take it.
I wonder how many could
What about Moorhead?
There you go.
Okay.
We'll follow up.
With Longwood, actually, the travel partner.
Ryder didn't make it this year. Colgate?
Colgate is in, well, that's good. I think it's in New Hampshire, right?
No idea.
It's definitely in the Northeast. Stetson's in Florida. That's in DeLand, Florida. I do know that. Duquesne? How many people know where Duquesne is? It's in Pittsburgh, right?
Yes, it is. Looked that up yesterday, actually.
Don't know.
How about, you said McNeese, right?
Yeah, got to be up there. I feel like prior to their Cinderella run, St. Peter's would have been a perennial contender for that.
No question. No question about it. But that's the beauty of the tournament. There are schools in the tournament every year that you're like, I've never heard of them. Like you're driving on a road trip and you see like the sign for some school and you're like, oh, no kidding, Coppin State. Although they're in our Kalamazoo bracket, I think, right?
Yeah, they're
There's
waiting.
always schools that like the tournament is where they made their name. Butler University's one of them.
Somebody didn't pay the electric bill for the selection show, so they're still waiting to figure out if they made it in or not.
That's right. I mean, Butler, I'm telling you, there are people in like Spokane, Washington that had never heard of Butler. All they knew is it was like Gonzaga. And then Butler, they didn't know where it was. And then Butler gets to the Final Four in Indy, and now everybody knows it's in Indy. Don Fisher, the voice of the Hoosiers, and we will recap the Hoosiers season and look forward with him next.
Experience college basketball's
So the NCAA tournament is set, and, as we knew, obviously, Indiana University not a part of that after their exit at pretty ugly fashion to Nebraska in the Big Ten tournament. Don Fisher, the voice of the Hoosiers, joins us now to talk about just kind of an overview of the season, I guess, Don. And I'll begin with this. Were you surprised, or did you kind of have inkling that Indiana would opt not to go into the NIT? Is that a good, bad, or neutral thing?
Well, I think it's a good thing this year, and I understand why Indiana decided not to, primarily because they have some work to do in the transfer portal, to say the least, since they don't have an incoming freshman on the roster, and we don't know who's going to opt out of Indiana because there are a couple of players that have a gut feeling will not be around next year that were on the roster. There are two coming back for sure, and that would be Trey Galloway and Anthony Leal, who announced they will come back for their fifth year of college basketball, which is a good thing for IU. But at the same time, Khalil Ware is obviously a guy that everybody's talking about possibly in the first round of the NBA draft, and if he is, I would assume that he will take off for that opportunity. And then who else might opt for the portal or whatever, but they've got to get some faces in here. You lose Xavier Johnson and Anthony Walker. Those two guys are gone for sure. Where is likely gone? That's three, and you've got Xavier Johnson and Walker gone. So anyway, long story short, I think they're probably going to have to go for at least 5 players in the portal, and I think that since today is the opening day for the transfer portal, we will probably have more news on that front here in the next 2 or 3 days.
Okay, so Don, I wanted to carry on that about the portal and how it relates to the NIT, but I'll table that to ask this. In terms of players that may be opting to leave Indiana that could come back with eligibility, as you talked about, I do agree. I think Khalil Ware, this is a really good year for him to go into the draft for a number of reasons, but in terms of other players, are there others that you anticipate could enter the portal because you've heard that chatter, or just kind of based on the law of averages?
I'm looking at it from the standpoint of what I've seen, body language, all those kinds of things, and guys that didn't get a lot of playing time. And I'm not saying that anybody's leaving at this point. I'm not sure of that. All I can tell you is in this day and age, when a guy's not getting the opportunity to play as much as he thinks he should have, that guys opt out. And they're going to try to see what they can get in the transfer portal and where they can go and that kind of thing. And that's my thinking process. It doesn't mean that I'm correct, but I bet I'm not far off.
One player, Don, that in the post-game interviews that I saw, and I know it's really hard to gauge right after a disappointing loss, especially a blowout loss like that, right? I mean, emotions are high.
Exactly.
But that was the first time, and I'm not around it intimately, obviously, but it was the first time that I had seen Malik Renew voice what appeared to be a hesitation or frustration with the way things are. Did we chalk that up strictly to just that, the emotions of that moment, or did you start to see towards the end that he may be one that also is frustrated?
Well, I mean, I think he's frustrated because Indiana's not winning. That's the primary thing, and I'm not sure anything about Malik's situation, and I really wasn't referring to him when I'm talking about guys that I think could leave. That doesn't mean that he won't look into it. And here's the other thing. You can look into it. You can get in the transfer portal and be re-recruited by your own team. So all these things coming into play now with NIL and the portal are huge. And they factor into how every kid thinks about his situation and about what he might want to do. And then you don't know who is in their ears, whether it's parents, whether it's supposed agents or their tax guy now. Who knows? I mean, there's so much going on in the world of college sports in regard to the NIL transfer portal scenarios that I don't know that you know if anybody's going to stay or anybody's going to go. You just don't know until it happens.
And, Don, that leads to my other question. Don Fisher, our guest, who is the voice of the Indiana Hoosiers. To me, and I want you to tell me if I'm wrong here, the NCAA is going to have to do something from a calendar standpoint in the way availabilities open up. The NIT is now a tournament, and the NIT to me, Don, has been a tournament that has served some teams really well. If you're a team that's building and you're a young team and you're a year away, the NIT is a great experience level and continue your practice. But to your point, it's, you look at it now and you go, okay, well, do you really build off young team from one year to the next, or do you rebuild with transfers and everything else? But the transfer portal to me is a severe threat to the NIT because of the timelines not lining up and teams opting to start the portal process in turning the page as opposed to the building process of what the NIT offers. Is the NCAA going to have to look at all of that?
Well, I think the NCAA has to look at everything that's going on right now, and if they don't, college basketball, it's already in chaos.
Totally.
So look, I'm an old guy, and I like the old ways, so to speak, and I just think what has happened recently in college athletics in regard to the portal and with the NIL stuff, it's just gotten totally out of hand. And unfortunately, I don't know how you get it in hand at this point because, look, the one thing we knew for a while was that the transfer portal, you could transfer one time and then you'd have to sit out the next year if you decided to transfer again. Well, now you can transfer every year because of a lawsuit that was filed and how it was ruled. So it's a mess. And I think college athletics is a mess because of it. I think it's difficult for coaches to deal with it. I think it's difficult for athletic directors to deal with it. And it's certainly difficult for the schools because now you've got to have a program where you raise money for NIL. And it's in many ways, I just think it's ruining college athletics. I leave it there because I'm certainly not as educated on all this stuff as a lot of other people are, but be careful what you wish for. And 10 years ago, we had all these guys talking about these kids ought to be being paid and all this kind of thing. And here we are. And now it's a mess.
Voice of the Hoosiers, the Hall of Famer Don Fisher is our guest. Don, we talked about throughout the season that it was clear they were lacking guard play. Mike Woodson counters that and says, well, Xavier Johnson's been hurt. He's a key piece for what we want to do. We took that. We kind of look at it's like, well, you still need better guards, but when Xavier Johnson was healthy and down the stretch, it was clear he mattered. He does enough to make that offense stir. For them, over that winning streak to close the year, did that validate Woodson's concerns to the point that they now know what they have to do in the portal this year?
Well, I think so. I mean, look, the thing that Xavier brought to the table more than anything else, in my opinion, and I think I stated this maybe last week or the week before, the thing that he brought to the table more than anything else was his defensive ability, his ability to guard the quicker, the more athletic, the tougher, more physical guard play. And he was much better at that than anybody else we had, with the exception of Galloway. And Galloway always took one or the two best guards that they had. And then Gabe Cupps had the other guy. And Gabe was he's a freshman. He's going to make mistakes. He's still not lost out there because he does a pretty good job of taking care of the basketball. And he did the best job of anybody just about this year on Boo Buie when they played against Northwestern. But he's still a young guy. He's still got a lot to learn, and he's got to become more of an offensive factor. But from a defensive standpoint, Xavier Johnson was missed. There's no doubt in my mind about that. And I think that's what he brought to the table more than anything else. Did he help on the offensive side? He did help in some ways, but he was not a major factor from a scoring standpoint or anything like that. His primary role was to make sure he could help stop the best guard on the other team from a defensive perspective. So I do think Mike Woodson was correct in assessing that Xavier was a big loss to this team. But he always said, well, that's not an excuse. He said, he wanted to go forth to the next man up type thing. But how many next man ups do you need to finally get it stopped? You know what I'm saying? So, honestly, at this juncture, they do have to get guard play. There's no question. They've got to upgrade. They've got to get at least one or maybe two guards out of the portal or wherever they're going to get them from. We can't trade in college basketball, so that's out. So you're going to have to get them out of the portal. or from a freshman perspective, someplace along the way that a recruit that's got overlooked or something. But it's just a mess, like I said, and I think Indiana's work is really ahead of them in regard to what's going to happen for next season, because they're going to have to really delve into the portal to get people.
Can't trade yet, Don. Give it time. I'm sure we'll get there eventually.
Well, it could. Eventually it could. Who knows?
Voice of the Hoosiers, Don Fisher, is our guest. Don, they'll have one guard at least coming back in Trey Galloway. Where is the realistic line for expectations for him in areas maybe where he can continue to improve and use his leadership on whatever they bring in additional guard play in the portal? Well,
the one thing that we know that he did do not this year, but last year, he was a really good three-point shooter. That left him this year for whatever reason. He couldn't find any consistency with the three-point shot. That's got to get better. There's no doubt about that. He's got to become a better free throw shooter, and I think he's capable of those things. But somebody needs to work with him to help him become more consistent in the three-point shot and his free throw shooting. That's where he has got to get better. And I think he's got to get a little bit better with his left hand. He's primarily a right-handed guy, and if you watched us play this year, every time he came down the floor with the ball in his hands, he started on the left side and then he went right. And there weren't too many people that could stop him, so he was pretty effective at it. But against the better teams and the better players or better defenses, he struggled a little bit to get shots off and to be able to do what he wanted to do with the basketball in his hand. So those are the areas I would look at for Trey Galloway. But again, they need to find a point guard that can either back up or is a really key type starter for this ball club. And that doesn't mean that Gabe Cupps can't fill that role at some point. I don't know if he's ready to fill that role yet from an offensive standpoint. He can handle the ball. He doesn't turn the ball over, but he has not become a scorer in any effective way at this point as far as Indiana basketball is concerned, and that's where he's got to improve.
Don, finally, you've obviously called plenty of NCAA tournament runs. You've also called NCAA tournament, first-round defeats, etc., all across the board. In your vast experience in covering the tournament, I know Indiana's not in it this year, but was there ever anything that you could look back on and find consistencies that could predict for a team whether or not it was one that had the moxie to make a deep run or one that was susceptible to being upset? Or is the beauty of this tournament the fact that you just kind of never know?
Well, I think that's always the beauty of this tournament. That's what makes it exciting, because there's so many opportunities for lesser teams to make a name for themselves. Florida Atlantic under Dusty May did it last year, without question. And what happens? They're very close. I don't think they've played as well this year at times as they did a year ago. And yet they're the 8th seed against Northwestern in the first round of the tournament this year. And nobody knows what's going to happen in the tournament. Look what happened to Purdue the last 2 years.
Yep.
I mean, they get beat in the first round by St. Peter's and Fairleigh Dickinson, and the year before that they got knocked off too early in the tournament. So, I mean, there are so many things that can happen in this tournament, and that is why it is one of the best tournaments it's one of the best parts of college basketball, of college athletics. The NCAA tournament is tremendous, and the talk of them expanding it further is ridiculous in my mind.
Totally agree.
There's no sense in that. Why would you take something that's that successful and ruin it with 20 more teams in it?
The full magic of Monday after Selection Sunday is us, the fans, being able to talk about the 4 or 5. Yeah, sure, there's always going to be somebody snubbed.
Pitchfork sales would plummet,
right?
Jake. Pitchfork sales around the country would plummet.
Don, that's the magic of it, is it not? Is sitting around and talking about the 4 or 5 that should have gotten in, right?
Exactly. I mean, what are we doing here in Indiana? We're all talking about Indiana State. Indiana State should be in the tournament, but they're not. Why? Because they're in a one-bid league. That's part of it. And the arguments about that and why it happens that way. Look at St. John's and Rick Pitino talking about they should abolish the net. The word net should never be said again. I
know
it's the greatest thing in the world to be able to have arguments one way or the other for the next month to watch college basketball and see the upsets, and we know we're going to get them. There's no question about that. It's so much fun, and it's such a great opportunity for people to enjoy themselves. Look at the guys that fly to Las Vegas the first weekend of the tournament every year.
Jimmy's doing it tomorrow. Yep.
Exactly. That's my point. I mean, it's a tremendous event. It's probably as good of an experience that you could possibly have in sports is to be a part of the NCAA tournament. And it's great for the fan bases and everything else. That's why it's so great. Don't ruin it by adding a whole bunch of more teams at this point because there's no need for it. It's all about money. We know that. Somehow make your money some other way, NCAA, please.
Don, I can only imagine that as a play-by-play announcer, that coming on the radio to talk after a disappointing weekend or a couple of losses for a team is probably the least thing that an announcer wants to do, only trumped by then the other half of it, which would be having to talk to me for 15 or 20 minutes. But you've done it all season long, and we have been more than absolutely, tremendously gracious for your time, and we certainly have enjoyed doing it over the course of the season. I'm extremely appreciative of it.
Well, it's fun to be on here. Obviously, I've been doing it for a number of years, not just with yourself, as you know, with your previous, with the previous folks there. And obviously, you're a radio station that carries our games, either football or basketball or both. The company, Emmis, it's no longer Emmis. It's what now?
Radio One. Yep. Yeah,
Radio
Urban
One.
Yeah.
And they're great people, and it's just fun to be a part of it all. It's college. It's college sports. I never went to college, but I've been in college for the last 58 years or whatever it's been now. It's just been so much fun to be a part of this whole thing. And obviously, my opinions are just like everybody else's, or just like everybody. No, I don't want to go there because that would be profane. So I won't go there. And that's why I'm not on social media too, guys. Trust me.
Your opinions are just that, right, Don?
Hey, hit them straight for us, Don,
and when they're
please.
the right opinions, Don, then they're fact. That's the bottom line, right?
Absolutely.
Hit them straight for us, Don,
That's
please.
right, Don.
Please.
We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, Don Fisher, the voice of the Indiana Hoosiers. Upcoming, by the way, Mike DeCourcy, 1 o'clock. We'll get back into the conversation about the tournament. Get his thoughts on the weakest region, the best region. I thought Purdue got a really good draw. We'll give away some numbers in the 1 o'clock hour as well. This is Query & Company on 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Do you need air conditioning service and want to
popular, highly anticipated numbers game. Going to get underway today. We'll give away a few numbers. Very simple. You get the school that wins the national championship. You get the double-digit seed to advance the furthest, or you get the team to be blown out by the largest margin in the NCAA tournament, and you are a winner. There will be 3 winners. I will buy a hat for the 3 winners of the respective school that got them the coveted championship crown of one of those 3 titles. It is very simple. You call in, you give me your favorite number, and I will give you the NCAA tournament team that has been randomly assigned to that number. We'll do that coming up in a little bit on the program, but Mike DeCourcy is next. I can imagine there are a few guys that have less time on their plate right now, which is why we are even more appreciative that he made a little bit for us today than Mike DeCourcy, because this is his time to shine. NCAA tournament time is here. The brackets are out. And Mike DeCourcy, I will get right to this question, and that is, once the brackets were announced, was there anything that overly surprised you, either by an omission or a team that was placed higher than where you would have expected?
Well, there were some seeds that I thought were bizarre, to say the least. Gonzaga being a number 5. Remember, Gonzaga was barely in the tournament a couple of weeks ago, if at all. So in many brackets, I think in mine, for the longest time, they were not. But I was ready to put them on the number 5 line for good if they had beaten St. Mary's in the West Coast Conference title game. But they didn't. They had 2 quality victories, high-quality victories, one on the road at St. Mary's and one on the road at Kentucky. But they also lost a fair number of high-end games. They played a lot of them and lost all but the 2 I mentioned. And then they played in the West Coast Conference in a season that was not extraordinary. It will be better next year when Oregon State and Washington State join, but it wasn't great this year other than USF and St. Mary's and the Zags. And so I didn't see anything that was worthy of a 5. I've been told that they moved from a 6 to a 5 because they had to knock BYU down a seed in order to keep them from playing on Sunday. It is one of the trickiest things when you're bracketing is what do you do with BYU? How do you keep them from having to play on Sunday? They won't play on Sundays based on their religion. And so you have to try to maneuver that, and sometimes you have to change their line. But Gonzaga shouldn't have been on the 6 to get moved up. They shouldn't have been any higher than a 7. I thought a 7 was the perfect spot for them. And then some of the Mountain West seeds, I thought New Mexico was very low. Nevada was bizarrely low. They had a really strong season, won a lot of road games in a good, solid league, beat TCU on a neutral floor in a tournament out in Hawaii, and yet only a 10, even behind TCU, the team that they beat on that neutral floor. So there were some things that they did in seeding that I don't think were justified. But selection-wise, I got 67 out of the 68 teams. And it's so bizarre to me. I mean, I do this twice a week for basically 3 months. Lenardi is on TV on ESPN all the time. Jerry Palm, the Purdue guy, is on the TV. He was on CBS Sports Network a whole weekend. Like, it's all there. I mean, Lenardi and I think, had the same team wrong, if I'm not mistaken.
Which one did you miss out on?
I had Virginia out.
Okay.
As did nearly every bracket analyst in the country. There were 200 brackets at the Bracket Matrix that I saw this morning. And some of the people who are on there are amateur and do it for fun, and that's great. And a lot of them are great at it. And some of them do it professionally like I do. And out of the 200 brackets, 20 had Virginia in. There's always a team like that the committee puts in. It's almost like they do it just to mess with us.
Who did you have in over Virginia that didn't get in?
Oklahoma. Now,
okay.
Oklahoma is a team whose resume I never loved. I always felt like that just the nature of the way the committee works, that they were going to value Oklahoma more than I did. And in the end, as I looked at the resumes, I mean, even still now, as I said, I don't love Oklahoma's resume, but it's still better than Virginia's. Virginia does not belong in this tournament this time. And they got the benefit of the committee's grace, and there they are.
Mike, when you look at Mike DeCourcy is our guest, I want to get right to and I mean this as no disrespect to Montana State or Grambling, but let's say, and I know it's dangerous, but if Purdue was to get by the winner of the play-in game, the second round matchup in an 8-9 is what has been so intriguing to me about Purdue before they came out. And then I see Utah State and TCU. Of Utah State and TCU, does either of them play a style that is particularly disruptive to Purdue? And by that, I mean, because I don't know. Does either one of them have that, like, kind of long length on the wings, trap type style that might give Purdue some problems or that can collapse down on Edey?
Well, I mean, I think TCU has some very dynamic guys. They have a lot of dynamism on their team. But they are a team that is really good at losing big games. That is absolutely, other than winning not big games, that's their specialty. They look at their resume, look at their season. A big game, they fall. They are a testimony to the power of analytics, the power of the power rankings, because they have not had an impressive season. There are other teams in the field that you can say that about, Michigan State being another. But that's been who TCU has been all year. Utah State, what I like about Utah State is that they play well in pressure moments. That's the thing that impressed me. They had a big game against New Mexico 10 days ago or so that they stood up the fire in that game because they needed it to win the outright Mountain West, and New Mexico desperately needed it because they were, of the Mountain West teams, the least accomplished and the one that was most in peril of not making the tournament until they won the auto bid on Saturday. And yet Utah State prevailed in that game. So I was impressed by their spirit and their fight. They won on a last-second three-pointer with a great closeout by the opposing guard for New Mexico, Jalen House, and they knocked it right in. And I like that about them. I don't think they're an elite team. Be honest, if Purdue plays at their level, they should be able to get through either of those. And that's where the concern should start, presuming that the Sweet 16 opponent is Kansas.
Mike DeCourcy is our guest, covers all things college basketball for the Big Ten Network and NCAA brackets for Fox Sports. Mike, the one thing we haven't talked about yet, we've done it in passing, but with Indiana State, and I know that for some people, net ranking is gospel. I know it's not the only thing the committee looks at, but we've never had a top 30 net team miss out on the field. What happened? Other than the obvious, they missed their chance with the automatic bid, but what happened to keep them out of the field? What could they have done differently? And is net not as big of a deal as people make it to be?
I don't understand how much the committee needs to say about what the net is before people understand it. It is a sorting tool. It replaced the old crappy RPI sorting tool. It's a better sorting tool, but it is a specific kind of sorting tool in which power is more important than success in the end. That's what the reality is, that if you go 30-0, all winning by 1 point, and another team goes 26-4, winning every 26, all the 26 games by 30 points, then they're probably going to have a higher net ranking than the 30-0 team, because power is what a predictive metric measures. And if people have a problem with that, then go ahead and have a problem with that. When I was in the meeting where the net was sort of birthed back in 2017, I said that I didn't think that should be the case, that you should have a predictive metric at the core of the selection process, that you should have a results metric that only measures how good are the wins you have. You beat, let's use UConn. Okay, you beat UConn on a neutral floor. That's a heck of a win. You beat St. Peter's on a neutral floor. It's a nice win, but it ain't UConn. That's what a results metric does. And I have never heard a coach complain about that. And they have the authority as the NABC to have a voice in this process. And I've never heard them say that this is a problem. So if you want to make it an issue, do that. But I don't think it's like one of those things that you see in politics where people want to have something to gripe about more so than they want to solve the problem.
But you get the weird argument that there's never happened before in the 5 years this has been where a top 30 team has missed
5
out.
Years. That's not
right.
That's not
I know it's not forever.
Stuff.
Sure. I get that.
I can tell you Indiana State's resume problem in a nutshell. They played 2 high major games, Alabama and Michigan State, and lost them both. Nobody's going to punish them for that. They were both road games against terrific teams. Okay, no problem. They played the other high-end elite team in their league 3 times. They lost twice. If they had swept the regular season series and then lost the conference title game in the manner that they did, which was very close, very competitive, et cetera, then they would have had a case, and they might have been in. They might have beaten Virginia into the field. But lacking that achievement, it was very easy for the committee to say, nope, not good enough. That's the problem that they had. And when I hear, I don't know whether they realized at Indiana State that they had the makings of a Valley championship team or not. But when I hear complaints about the big-time schools won't play us, what always blows me away is the simple solution is right there in front of you, and I've been talking about this for literally 20 years in my columns in the Sporting News, on the radio, etc. Play each other. If you can't get Duke to play you, and you can't get Duke to play you, go play James Madison. They're also called the Dukes. They're really good. Play them. It'll help. James Madison was like 50th in the net. Now it's going to hurt one of you, but that's the game. I mean, when Michigan State plays Indiana, somebody gets hurt and somebody gets advantaged. That's the way the sport works. But if you don't go out and schedule those games, then who are you complaining about?
Lastly, Mike, because I know you got to run, I will leave you this question. Of the 4 number 1 seeds, the one that you felt like got into the region that best suits them in terms of the 2, 3, 4, and 5 that play a style maybe that's good for them, of the 4 number 1s, the one that got the best draw is who?
I think it's probably Carolina. I talked before about how TCU kind of specializes in losing big games. I mean, that's the entire West region, really. And I think you can throw Carolina into that to an extent because they lost to their rival in a conference championship game, and their rival had a mediocre season. Well, it's not their main rival, but certainly NC State is a rival. And other than St. Mary's, I think you can say that about most everyone. Arizona somehow managed to lose to the 3 bottom teams in their league. I don't know that that's ever happened before. I keep throwing that out there because I want one of those stat people that are always coming up with these incredible factoids. Like, I don't have the time or the inclination to do that. But I imagine that a Power 5 conference champion regular season has never lost to the 3 teams at the bottom of their conference, and yet Arizona did. Alabama, another team like that, that so unpredictable, doesn't win the biggest games. So I think Carolina is helped by that, but they're also part of the problem, so to speak, based on that NC State loss. So we'll see who comes out of there. Arizona is the team that's probably the best equipped physically to win out there, but it's really hard to pick a team in that region that you can trust.
Mike, we can read your work or watch you where leading up to the tournament? Well, at TSN Mike on Twitter, sportingnews.com. And every week I do twice a week I do a appearance on a network called Sports Grid that you can get on XM as well as online at Sports Grid, their channel online, so you can see me there as well. My work with Fox is done. The bracket is in. So I will be back next year, hopefully picking teams, and maybe this time the committee will be more in line with how I think. But 67 out of 68, I'll take it. Pretty darn good. All right, we'll give you a pass on the Virginia-Oklahoma mix-up. How's that? I'll take the L along with the 180 other bracket teams who did the same. That's right, Mike. We appreciate the time as always. Thanks, Jake. All right, Mike DeCourcy joining us on the program. And looking at that bracket, Jimmy, we haven't done it yet. Are you ready to announce your Final Four? Yeah, absolutely. Do you want me to lead off? Yeah, go ahead. Okay, my Final Four. Houston, Tennessee. I realize this is not a very creative bracket. I apologize. UConn, North Carolina. Eddie? I reserve the right to change between now and then, but that's where it is now.
Okay, so I have Purdue in one. I, too, have Houston, UConn, and then a little bit of a wild card here from the West region. I'm going to go with Alabama. Ooh. Okay. I can deal with that. What about you? What does Jake Query have for his Final Four? Every part of me hates saying this. I worry heavily about Tennessee getting revenge for the Ryan Klein game.
and upending Purdue in the regional final. And I had Tennessee there, but since you had Tennessee, I'll take Purdue.
Okay.
I'll say Purdue is in.
To your point earlier, Jake, about Purdue, their path sets up nicely to get to the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 rounds. But once you get there, in theory,
right?
that's where all bets are off and you're playing.
No question. I'll take Purdue.
All right.
I think Houston's fascinating to me because they seem like this juggernaut, and then Iowa State blows them off the floor. But I think Houston, the way they guard and the intensity they create, I'll take Houston as well. In, I guess it's the West region, I have Arizona.
Okay.
Arizona's either going to go to the Final Four or get beat by Long Beach State, right?
That's how I feel about Creighton.
Yeah, like they're either going to make a run or they're going to get bounced early.
Mm-hmm.
I can see that. And then the team that I think is the strongest and I think will win it all, and I know it is really, really, really lame for me to say it.
You and I are in the same boat. I think I saw
but
your
I
phone
think
earlier.
Connecticut is absolutely on a juggernaut.
Yeah. That's one I'm willing to go down with the ship on. I'll follow UConn for back-to-back titles the first time since Florida, and we'll be fine.
You know, I think Hurley is probably pretty difficult and pretty demanding, but he can coach, man. And you know, I think Connecticut's going to be awfully tough.
Eddie, who do you have winning it all?
Winning it all?
Yeah.
I got Purdue this year.
Okay. I mean,
I think it's different. They're different this year.
That's fair.
UConn Houston was my title game, by the way. I don't know if you said who your title game was. But.
Give me mine was UConn Houston also. Okay, give me the team. Give me your surprise Sweet 16 team.
Grand Canyon.
Okay.
By
the way, are they really just called the Lopes or is it Antelopes?
I think it's just Lopes. Yeah, I got Grand Canyon over St. Mary's. Then I have them upsetting Alabama in the second round. I'm realizing, though, I have a lot of do you ever get to this? Do you ever tinker with the bracket, or once you do it, you're done?
No, you for sure. Like, yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna
because I have three. I have
a
three
secondary.
12, I have 3 12-5s, and I'm just realizing that now 12 over 5, and I'm like, maybe I need to reevaluate. I have McNeese State also in the Sweet 16.
Well,
they took down Samford in the second round.
I think it's okay to have. I think the smart play strategically is to pick some upsets in round one.
Sure.
But basically, you start going with chalk by the Sweet 16.
It gets real by the time you get to the high stakes.
I think Brigham Young
rounds.
makes the Sweet 16. I think BYU beats Illinois.
Nice.
Ooh.
You seem stunned, Eddie.
Just the way Illinois is playing right now.
James Madison upsets Wisconsin.
Love that. I have that too.
Oh, goodness. That's the all three of us do. That's not good.
And my double-digit seed in the Sweet 16, because I love the way they're coached. That was
the Roadrunners?
No, that was more of a penguin, wasn't it? No, hold on.
The Ducks?
Oregon
Ducks, baby.
Oh, wow.
Riding high.
I'll take Oregon into the Sweet 16. All right, numbers game. We're going to do it next. You give us a call right now. Here's how we do this. You give us a call at 239-1070. We'll line you up. You give us a number. I have a random. So in other words, let's just say that you say my favorite number is 17. I'm not even looking at the sheet here. So 17, we ran it into a hopper. Number 17 is already linked to, say, Long Beach State. And if you call in 17, you get Long Beach State. 3 ways to win. You get the national champion, you get the double-digit seed to advance the furthest, or you get the team blown out by the largest margin. If you are a winner, then you, courtesy of my pocketbook, thank you, you will get a hat of the school that won you the prize. So, for example, Long Beach State makes a run. You had Long Beach State. They're the double-digit seed to go the furthest. You're rocking a Long Beach State hat at a party sometime over the course of the summer, and somebody goes, "It's a cool hat. Where'd you get it?" "I won it from Aquarium Company."
Now, we've got some
The
tickets.
numbers game? Yes, that's how I won it.
We've got some tickets to give away here as well. Do we want to do this during this segment or just strictly numbers?
Strictly numbers, and we'll give away tickets to Adam Ant later, right?
Works for me. We've got
because
tickets
somebody's
all
going
week.
to get number 2, and we also have Goody Two Shoes from Adam Ant, so we'll do that later. All right, numbers game next. 239-1070. Line them up next.
Hey, Andy! America's greatest hot rod tradition is
And let me tell you, we've done massive research on this. Bosses hate it. Kids love it.
That's a win for me. Because ironically enough, you're getting the right demos then.
That's right.
Are we setting a cap at the number of numbers we're giving out today?
What do you think, Jimmy? Eddie, you're the producer. What do you say?
I say we do the 5 that are on the line today. That way we can regroup and get some sounders ready for tomorrow and have a little more fun with this.
And then Tuesday, Wednesday, we'll have to load them up. And then we can do some. Well, I guess Thursday, the tournament's underway,
you got
right?
10 minutes. You basically have 10 minutes between show start.
We'll have to do a little bit, probably a few rounds today, but yeah.
That's fine.
We'll be good, though. All right, let's start with Greg. Greg with 2 G's. Greg, your favorite number is what, brother?
29.
What is the significance in the life of Greg of number 29, if you don't mind me asking?
That's my birthday, and I think we got a good pick with this.
Okay, Greg, where'd you go to high school?
Warren Central Warrior, buddy.
Warren Central Warriors. All right, well, I went to North Central. They had a guy named Keith Licklider that played basketball for this school. So, too, did Courtney Lee. And at North Central, we had an auxiliary school on campus at the top of a hill called Hilltop. You got the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers, Greg. Western Kentucky. You seem thrilled by that, Jimmy.
I don't know. I'm just trying to find my role
Former
in this game.
Hoosier.
That's all I'm trying to do.
Christian Lander is on the squad.
Christian Lander is, in fact. You got a 5-star, Greg, that's going to turn around the Indiana program right there for your Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. All right, let's go to Matthew. Matthew. What's up, Matthew?
Hey, Jake. Not much.
Now, Matthew, I'm going to give exception to the rule. There are only 2 exceptions that I've given in this game because I have very strict rules that I live by. The first is that Valerie automatically gets Duke because she's the one that randomly assigned the numbers. The other is I'm only doing this, Matthew, and this is the last time that you get the new Hoosier benefit, right? Because we're going to indoctrinate you fully as a full-time Hoosier. But my guess is that you being a native of Maine who has moved to Indianapolis to start a new life of prosperity here with Hoosiers abound, that you would like a slice of home, and though Maine is not in it because they've never been in it, I'm going to guess that you would like to have the Catamounts of Vermont. Is that correct?
Yes, I would love that.
Matthew, they are off the board. I will give you the Vermont Catamounts.
Now, what number is that?
That is number 60 that is gone.
Okay.
So numbers 53, 60, and 29 are off the board. 53, 60, and 29 off the board. Spencer joins us on the program. What's up, Spencer?
Nothing.
Spencer, when you were a kid, did you ever go to the gift store in Castleton Square Mall to try to sneak pictures of like the Heather Locklear poster and the edible undies at Spencer Gifts when you were a kid?
I actually didn't know about Spencer's Gifts till I was like 19.
Just as your parents would prefer. All right, what number would you like, Spencer?
Let's go with 3. Purdue got the number 3 overall seed. Carson Edwards wore 3. Braden Smith's going to get us to the promised land this year.
For number 3, Spencer, you got the school that former Purdue nemesis Steve Alford once coached and now is coached by none other than Richard Pitino. The Lobos of New Mexico is off the board. All right, Jimmy. Good, Jimmy. What's up, Jimmy?
Hey, what's up, Jake? What's up, Jimmy? What's up, Eddie?
What's going on, Jimmy?
All right, what number would you like, Jimmy?
14.
Jimmy, I can't remember. Where did your dad go to school?
My dad went to West Lafayette and then Dartmouth College.
Now, how about yourself, Jimmy? Do you have a favorite team in the tournament?
I do, Purdue.
Jimmy, number 14 belongs to the number 1 seeded Boilermakers of Purdue.
Way to go, Jimmy.
Jimmy, you have Purdue. That is totally legit. I will photograph the number for everybody so they know.
I'll swear under
Jimmy
oath.
has Purdue. All right, Jameson. Let's do a shot at Jameson yesterday. Did you have some Jameson yesterday, Jameson?
You know I did.
I'll bet. More than just a shot, right?
I had a few of them. Put a little hair in your chest, but it's good for you, man.
All right, Jameson, what number would you like?
We're going to go 11, Barry Larkin.
Number 11 for Jameson. Man, this is perfect that you got this school because they got darn near your name. We're going to call him Jameson Madison. You got James Madison. The Dukes go to Jameson. James Madison's off the board. Bob is next. Hey, Bob, how's the wind tunnel?
Number 33.
Number 33. He got right to it. Is there a significance to the number 33 for you, Bob? Are you on flight 33?
That's miles per hour of the wind right now.
No kidding. Bob, what's the significance of number 33 in your life?
I have twin boys, and one of them was born at 12:33, and the other one at 12:37.
That's awesome.
I like that,
Congratulations.
Bob. Guess what, Bob? You got the Arizona Wildcats. Man, some heavy hitters going quickly here. All right, let's go to Dave. Dave, what's up? What number would you like?
Give me 19, John.
Number 19. Number 19 for Dave. Dave, just out of curiosity, how old a fella are you?
I'm 60.
60. Okay. You a married fella?
Yes.
Okay. Do you like that Demi Moore?
Back in her prime, yeah, she was fine.
Okay. What about? Did you ever watch Mrs. Robinson, the Graduate with Dustin Hoffman and Mrs. Robinson?
No, but I vaguely remember the movie, though.
You know what those two ladies have in common, Dave?
They went to UConn.
No, they are both Cougars, and so too is Washington State, who you got. And Washington State goes to Dave. We go to Kurt. Kurt, what's going on?
Hey, Jake, how are you doing?
You know, Kurt, I'm not bad. How about yourself?
Pretty darn good.
Did you have a good weekend, Kurt?
Oh, yeah, just fine.
Any green beer?
I did not. I did not go out and party.
Okay, that's nothing wrong with that. Kurt, how old a fella are you, Kurt?
I am 59.
59. When you think about the NCAA tournament, what is the one memory that jumps out to mind to you of yesteryear more than any other?
Oh, Keith Smart shot for IU to beat Syracuse.
Pretty hard to argue that, Kurt. Unfortunately, you got to be 59 to remember those glory days, right? You know what I mean?
Right. Yep.
All right, Kurt, what number would you like?
16.
16. Any significance to the number Sweet 16 for you?
It's my birthday, and it's just always kind of been a lucky number.
Kurt, did you grow up an Indiana fan?
Yes.
Did you like Bobby Knight?
I liked him as a coach.
Did you follow his career after Indiana?
A little bit. I wasn't like a huge, a Texas Tech fan.
Well, you are now because you got the Red Raiders. They are number 16.
Baby. Let's go.
There you go. All right, John. Let's go to John next. John, what's up?
Let's go with the greatest quarterback to never win a ring, Dan Marino.
John, I'll tell you what. I love the fact that you got right to it, man. That is my style. I love that. I mean, you just zipped right into that, didn't you? You know what I mean? You're like, I'm just going to zip right into this, and that's why you got Akron. The Akron Zips go to John. Akron to John. All right, let's go to Pat. We're just flying through these here. I love it. Pat, what's going on? We'll go three more. Pat, what's up?
Up for Fort Wayne calling in, guys.
Wow, all the way from the Wayne, huh? What high school did you attend up there, Pat?
Bishop Lures.
Okay. And what makes you listen to this program? Is your internet broken?
No, I kind of just enjoy the heck out of it, really.
Well, Pat, we appreciate that.
Pat.
What number would you like, Pat?
44.
Is there a significance to the number 44 in your life, Pat?
Not today, no.
Now, Pat, here's the thing. One of the ways in which you can win this contest is to get a team that gets blown out by the largest margin or a double-digit seed to advance the furthest. You have an opportunity because you get not one team but two. You have gotten one of the play-ins. You have both Grambling and Montana State. So my buddy John Ackerman, who played at Montana State, is pulling for you. Grambling and Montana State go to Pat.
He's also technically a big Purdue fan because that's who they would play in the first round.
So he wants them to blow out,
unless
right?
Yeah.
Big Glenn. Glenn, what is going on? Give me a number, brother.
I'm doing good. I'm a big Chase Elliott fan and a T.J. McConnell fan. I'm going with my guys, number 9.
All right, number 9. Number 9. Do you like the Beatles, Glenn? They are number 9. Sure Glenn, here's the thing. If your team pulls an upset, gets far, wins it all, you get a hat, you're going to stand up, and you're going to yell really loud because you got the Yale Bulldogs, Glenn, at number 9. All right, we'll go with Keith. Since we talked about Keith Smart, we'll go to Keith R. Keith, what's up?
Hey, is number 58 available?
You sound like you are hell-bent on 58. What's the fascination with the number 58 for you, Keith?
It's just weird. It never brought me any luck. It's my high school football number.
Where'd you play high school football, Keith?
We met at the Wood Show the last summer. I played at Western Boone. I live in Lebanon now. But
I do remember. I told you about how I covered that Western Boone team with what was the name of the two running backs they had? Matt Jackson, I think was the kid's name.
Yeah, Matt Jackson.
Joe Busald or something like that.
Busald was, yeah.
Yeah, he was a beast,
They
man.
were a monster, yeah. My brother was on that team, yeah.
So, Keith, you, like the last caller, you get not one but two. It's a buy one, get one free for you, Keith.
I'll take it. I'm a bargain shopper.
You got the Buffaloes of Colorado.
Nice.
And you got Boise State and their weird colored court. Boise State and their blue, orange, and white court. We'll go one more. Steve joins us. Did you say two, Eddie? We got two left. Steve and Dan. Steve, what's up?
Hey, man, I'm just hoping to get number 13.
Steve, 13 was taken off the board. Do you have an alternate number you would like?
All right, let's go 37.
Number 37. Steve, how old a fella are you? Are you 37 years old?
No, I'm 76.
Are you really?
Yeah, I graduated in 65 from North Central.
Oh, you're a Panther, huh? Hail our Panthers. What middle school did you attend? Yeah. What middle school were you, Steve?
Eastwood.
Oh, my man. Same path as I. Here's the thing, Steve. There's a school that began the whole chant of, I believe that we will win. They were one of the first to do it in college basketball. They got a great home court advantage. Con Smith, former Indiana assistant, once coached there. You have the Aggies of Utah State, who Purdue may see in round number 2 if they can beat TCU. And lastly, Dan rounds us out for this round of number giveaway. Dan, what is going on?
Hey, it's Dale.
Dale, my bad. What's up, Dale?
Hey, how's it going?
I can't complain. Dale, you sound like a nice fella. Would you like to come to our PBR party if we ever do it? Diet Coke's perfectly sufficient. Would you come to that and hang out, Dale?
Absolutely.
Have you ever been to Dale, Indiana?
I'm a North Central grad, too.
Are you really? Do we have anybody from not Washington Township listening to the program?
Decatur Township right here.
There you go. Dale, what year did you graduate from North Central?
78.
78. All right. Right before the Daring brothers. Weren't they there around then?
Yes.
Al and Hal. All right. What number would you like, Dale?
I'll go with 15.
15. What is the significance of the number 15 in your life, Dale?
Graduate of Purdue, so it's Edie and Drew Brees.
That's a good way of looking at it. They also got you a number 1 seed. It is not the Boilermakers of Purdue, but the Tar Heels of North Carolina are off the board to Dale. And that's how we do the number giveaway.
15 right there.
So we just gave away how many numbers?
I think it was 15. I may have forgotten to write one down because I was
3,
taking
6,
phone calls.
8, 11. That is correct. 15 numbers right there. See how we do it? Jimmy, don't you? Now it really gets fun once we get Eddie some ideas here. It really gets fun when we start playing the sounders that let people know who they got.
Sure.
Like, for example, when you get the Cougars, and there are other opportunities for Cougars, when you get the Cougars and then you get the sound drop from, say, American Pie of the woman saying, Mr. Finch, are you trying to seduce me? That's a Cougar, right? So
sure.
Boom, there you go. Now, here is a question that I noticed yesterday. I'm going to ask you guys for the technicality on a trivia question, okay? There are 4 coaches. I believe it's 4. Lon Kruger, Tubby Smith, Rick Pitino, and there's one more that I'm missing. I got to think here. Tubby Smith, Lon Kruger, Rick Pitino, and I guess that's it. And Steve Alford. They have all coached 5 different schools to the NCAA tournament. Now, my question is, technically speaking, Steve Alford last year, either last year or 2 years ago, got Nevada into the tournament, but they got to the play-in game and were eliminated. Does that count as bringing your school to the NCAA tournament?
Yes.
I say no.
I'm with Eddie. Because it's a play-in game. Meaning you have to win that game. You are playing your way into what?
You're playing your way into the field of 64.
You're playing your way into the tournament, right?
I can't say that because it's against my point of rationale for what I think. I would argue you're playing your way into the field of 64.
So if the Pacers were in the play-in, would you say they made the NBA playoffs?
But that's a different thing.
No, it's not.
No. Can I justify it before you talk over me?
Sure.
Yeah. The play-in tournament has its own separate stats. It does not count towards the playoffs. The play-in up at Dayton still counts for NCAA tournament statistics. It is acknowledged by the NCAA as the first 4, the beginning of the tournament. The play-in's a different thing in the NBA. It's a totally different thing.
Can you name the 5 schools, either of you, that Steve Alford has taken to the NCAA tournament?
New Mexico State.
No.
Or where,
Close.
Nevada?
Was it San Diego?
Nevada.
UCLA?
Okay.
UCLA.
You go.
Oh, that's the only two I got for right now.
All right. What did I say? Was it New Mexico?
New
Or San
Mexico.
Diego? Okay. New Mexico. Where was he before that? Iowa?
Iowa, correct. And then where he began. This one would be the hardest because he was only there a handful of years. He got to the Sweet 16, and that's what allowed him to get the Iowa job. In matter of fact, it doesn't even go by the same name anymore. Southwest Missouri State.
Okay. Who are they now?
That was the first, just Missouri State.
Just Missouri State, okay.
Then you have, now Lon Kruger, I believe, got 6 schools to the NCAA tournament. Okay? Can you look up, Eddie, for me, the career coaching path of Lon Kruger? I believe that Lon Kruger and his brother, Freddie, was a rather intimidating recruiter. But Lon Kruger, I believe, his path would have been Kansas State, Illinois, UNLV, Florida. Am I missing 2, Eddie?
Did you sneak a Freddy Krueger joke in there that I just missed? Is that what that was?
You've
Well
got
done,
the
well
teams
done.
right,
Good
but
on
the
you.
order isn't
Okay.
correct.
Well, was Kansas State the first?
Kansas State was first, correct?
Then Illinois?
No.
Okay. Then Florida?
Correct.
Okay. Then Illinois?
Correct.
Then there's somebody between that and UNLV, correct?
There's one team, but not in college.
Well, he went to the Atlanta Hawks.
Correct.
Right. But I'm talking about who he got to the NCAA tournament. Then he came back to college, right?
Correct.
And he coached somebody other than UNLV, right?
No.
Okay, UNLV.
Correct.
And there's yet another one, right?
Yes, there was a team after UNLV, and his last year coaching there was in 2021.
So this is a 5th that he got to the tournament, right?
Uh-huh. We just
I
talked
thought he
about
had
this
6.
school. No. Patino would have been the first had he done it with St. John's this year.
Okay.
But we were just talking about this school with Mike DeCourcy.
Oklahoma. Yeah,
Yes.
of course. Oklahoma. There you go. Lon Kruger was a heck of a coach, man. He was one of the more underappreciated coaches, in my opinion, of the last handful of years. Mike Chappell, by the way, in 15.
Let Bill Estes put you behind the wheel of the powerhouse.
Love me some Adam Ant. He's going to be at Old National coming up on Wednesday, March the 27th. My quick math tells me that would be a week from this Wednesday at 8 o'clock. And the English Beat's going to be there with him, and we have tickets to give away, correct, Eddie?
Si.
Is that a yes?
Si.
How many tickets do we have to give away?
Dos.
Okay. And this is for Adam Ant a week from Wednesday, correct?
Si.
I'm trying to see if there's any more Spanish I can drag out of you. What more do you know in Spanish?
Very limited.
Piquito?
Okay.
Caller number what, did you say, Eddie?
Well, we have no callers. Well, we have one caller, so that may be the lucky winner.
No, I'm saying caller number. We haven't made the pledge for phone calls just yet. And by the way, thank you for those who participated in the numbers game. I do not give them away via text. Thank you for texting, but I do not give them away via text. Okay, now, caller number what, you will be winning tickets to see Adam Ant along with the English Beat at Old National, which is a fabulous venue coming up at 8 o'clock 1 week from Wednesday.
Quattro.
Caller number 4 will be on their way. And the guy that is number 1 in your heart, number 4 on your television dial, and number 59 on your dial as well is Mike Chappell, and he will join us next.
The Wake Up Call with KB and
Chappell, of course, you see on WXIN Fox 59, CBS 4. You could read his work from both places as well. And the thing that I love about Mike Chappell is you never know on the weekends when you're out to dinner or whatnot, when all of a sudden he will text you a video of somebody stripping on Patrol Live. Which, Chap, you're watching it and you're like, you have no idea, Mike Chappell, you have no idea how much it warms my heart to know that when you see a couple of overweight naked people on Patrol Live, that I'm the person you think of.
Well, and because I like On Patrol Live, I do. I think it's pretty cool. I'm still angry that Beech Grove was no longer involved. I mean, that was a Beech Grove thing they wanted to break, but I just think that's people. Those are people that we see all the time, but I enjoy it. Yeah, and it's entertaining. It just is.
Oh, it's great.
And I think of you because we always go back and forth on it. So yeah, it's On Patrol Live. Yes, sir.
I turn on to Shannon and I go,
I need to get a shirt. I need to get a shirt or a mug, just so I got it.
The best part about it is I show it to Shannon, to which point she's like, "Well, we need to get home pretty soon after dinner to watch On Patrol Live." I'm like, "Yeah, you're right. Your weekends are made, right?" During the time that was happening, Mike, there was also a lot of speculation swirling about whether or not the Colts were going to be actively involved in a trade over the course of the weekend or imminently to bolster their defense, notably within Kansas City. And there have been reports since across the board saying that those talks never took place, others saying that they might have taken place and fallen apart. What say Mike Chappell?
Oh, to say they haven't talked is wrong. I mean, sure they have. I have no doubt that they talked and where you want to say serious, I guess obviously not serious enough because it didn't get done. But I think they made a push. They made a push for Daniel Hunter. There's no question that they did. And they made a push for L'Jarius Sneed. And it just, for whatever reason, to this point, it hasn't gotten done. Could it happen today, tomorrow, in a week, a month? Possibly. But at some point, what you have to understand, and this, I put this out there over the weekend, I don't know that I've ever criticized somebody for using sources and then being wrong. Hey, if you trust your source, go for it. You just have to trust your source. And unfortunately, nowadays, source is such a vague term. You know, Jake, you're a source. You tell me something and I go with it. Well, you could have been blowing smoke at your butt. I don't know.
Right.
So you just really have to trust that. And yes, I think they had talks. I think it got serious to some level, whatever serious, and it didn't work. And again, I wrote something today on these mock drafts. Every move that is made impacts another move. And I really believe that not getting Daniel Hunter done, not getting L'Jarius Sneed done impacted what the Colts did after that with re-signing, 6 really, really good players, 2 or 3 others that are depth players at, $200 million, $100 million guaranteed. If you get Sneed done, if you get Hunter done, you might not be able to do all of that. So, and you can't wait around. You have to kind of go with what you can get done then and not be left holding the bag, whatever. So, yeah, they talked. How long ago? I don't know. I don't know that. But so just be sure of your sources. And this is such a different media world now to where, again, sources don't mean the same thing. And to say that you read it on Twitter so you can say that it's been reported that, well, that's wrong. That's just wrong. So it's just be careful. And I'm not telling people how to do their job other than to be careful. And for the fan base, trust who you want to trust. And if you want to get all fired up and lather it up over this guy, that guy, and then it doesn't happen and you're disappointed or PO'd, that's fine. But I always say in so many things, consider the source. And if you consider the source and you're fine with it, then go with it.
Mike, I've always, this is kind of a side topic, but every once in a while, and I'm going to give a term that probably the listening audience may not be familiar with, and I'm not saying, Mike, that you have ever fallen victim to this. I have. At least I think I have. Every once in a while, probably like once every 10 years, a team will do, I think, what's called a leak test, where they have a suspicion that someone within their franchise or organization is a little too loose-lipped. So they tell that person something that's not even accurate to see if all of a sudden that's being reported, and then they know that that's the person that's giving out the information from inside the building. The only time that I could think of where multiple people in the market, and I'm curious if you recall this, Mike, when Jim Caldwell was relieved of his duties as the head coach, it was widely reported, including by me, that he was going to be retained. And then at the 11th hour, they announced that he was being relieved of his duties. And I always thought that was a leak test. Do you remember, though, the wide report that he was going to be back?
I don't remember that specifically, but I do remember a time when I think the team had a really concern about a leak, and there was something out there, and I thought it regarded like Anthony Gonzalez, who remains one of my all-time favorite Colts, by the way. And it got out there, and I think then they found who the mole was. But no, I sure you would do that. There have been problems in the past during Napoleon years, and it was during Napoleon years that I mentioned that. I guess with the Grigson years, and I really believe that Ballard and his people have really plugged leaks. Whenever I see people outside, and here we are getting so pompous, outside of Indy and the people that I work with all the time and I'm familiar with, when I see people outside the area say, my team sources tell me, I'm just skeptical because I really believe that these guys have really tightened things down. Now, there are times that the owner wants things out there. He's helped me on some things before, and God love him. Hey, I'm here. Whenever it's the owner, the head coach, or the GM, if you want to use me to get some information out there, here you've got my number. Those are sources you trust. So yeah, I do think teams do that because you have to be able, as much as possible, and it drives us crazy sometimes, but you have to be able to do your business without people knowing your business ahead of time. So yes, I don't remember Caldwell, but I am convinced that they did that prior to that with what they thought was a leak, and I thought, as it turned out, I think they were right.
The Dean Mike Chappell of Fox 59 and CBS 4 is our guest. Chap, they gave out something like, whatever it was, $200 million or $150 million in terms of local in-house free agents trying to retain, and then they added basically what adds the two backup pieces to round out what they've done so far, the Colts in free agency. At what point is there still time to add a piece or two in the coming weeks still to the free agent pool? And at what point does that pivot occur where it's now on, it's draft season, it's trades, it's that whole shift away from free agency for the Colts?
Oh, I think they've always got their toes in the free agent market. I would, L'Jarius Sneed aside, I think they need a veteran corner. I do. I think they need a veteran receiver. A safety, holy smokes, their safety room is really, really bad. And it's a pretty good group of veteran safeties. I think one of the starting safeties isn't here yet. It'll be one of those guys that's got a pretty good resume, and they've had pretty good luck through the years of bringing in veteran safeties. I don't know, so I think that those still happen. They've got the cap flexibility to do that, and I don't know that anything they've done or anything they will do will impact what they do in the draft. That first pick needs to be, in my mind, a receiver, a corner. If Brock Bowers is there, my goodness, what he could do to this offense. So anything short of a L'Jarius Sneed, I think they still need a corner. And I think they get a safety before the draft just because if you wait too long, then you really end up getting lesser talent. So it's all intertwined, but I still think they can get a couple of free agents before the draft. Gosh, we've got, a month before the draft, so I think they can get another player or two. And locking up Pitt for 3 more years doesn't impact receiver. You still need help. Getting Kenny Moore done doesn't, it doesn't impact. He's a slot guy. You still need help outside. So they still have work to do on this roster.
Chap, I realize that this next question is slightly out of their control because there's a chance he might not be there, but in all likelihood, they're not trading for this position. It would be something they either take in the draft or they stay in-house with. If Brock Bowers is there at 15 and they do not take him, is that a clear indication in your mind that they fully trust in some capacity either Jelani Woods, Kylan Granson, Molly Cox, maybe Will Mallory to eventually take strides this coming season to be the tight end you can pair with Richardson?
Well, that's tough. I don't know how you pass on Brock Bowers if he's there from everything that he's done. Well, a 2-time Mackey Award winner, I think the only one. I don't know how you pass on Brock Bowers at 15. I
just feel like they have a lot of faith in-house, right? That's been their bread and butter, but especially at that position, Jelani Woods being hurt, I feel like they still believe they have, or Ballard does anyway, at least from my seat, believe what they have in-house. Regardless of Bowers, do you get that same sense?
Well, but I believe it's going to be warm tomorrow, and it's 30 degrees right now. So I don't know how much you can go on belief. And,
yeah.
Chris Ballard talked to us about the tight end position at the combine, and he likes the group. But boy, when you can add, a Dallas Clark type player. I mean, remember what Dallas Clark did with that team?
Mm-hmm.
It would mean to me that they would have a receiver, a corner, a pass rusher, and maybe an offensive tackle graded so much higher than Brock Bowers. In that case, I believe they go with what their grades are. I can't say that if they pass on Bowers, it's because they like what they've got, but not to the point that we're okay there. It would be to me that someone else is just better graded, and there's all these voices out there, but all of them seem to agree that this guy is a top, 10 prospect. And do you want to take a tight end that high? Well, these guys took a guard 6th, so that's not going to keep him from doing that. So I think it will be more a case if they got a better grade on another player, and not that they like what they've got.
Do you think it's possible, Mike? Mike Chappell is our guest here on Query & Company. Do you think it's possible? Let's say Bowers is gone. I mean, we're dealing in a lot of hypotheticals here. But could they draft a player at 15 where the deciding factor of that player is the value of replacement of that position later? In other words, if they are weighing between a receiver and a corner, let's say, and they have all things given equal, could they go with the position that has the least amount of depth in the draft, knowing that the other position they could still fill in round 2 for less than a drop-off of what they passed on in round 1?
Absolutely. And all you hear is how deep, really, really deep the receivers are. They could fully believe that they can get a really good guy at, 45 in round 2. Now, you're not going to get what people consider the top 2 or 3 guys, obviously, and people are talking about this being really a difference-making draft at the top. Same at corner. This is common sense thing. You're not going to get the same level of player at 45 as you will at 15. But if they're okay with that, I can see that. And also one thing that, maybe they, again, I was really impressed by Pittman getting a 3-year deal. He's going to get another chance at free agency when he's 29. That's crazy for him, which is good. Maybe they take a receiver at 15 with the idea that, hey, if in 3 years this guy is that good, then you can move on from Pittman as much as you might not want to, but and not be paying Pittman. Gosh, what's a receiver going to cost in 3 years? $30 million, $35 million? I don't know. You always have those things in your mind, but I think the depth of position matters a lot. Can you get something similar in round 2 as in round 1? And maybe you can at corner, maybe you can at receiver, maybe you can't at offensive tackle, which the way the roster's built, that's not a crying need, but you don't pass on great tackles. So, yeah, I think that there's something to that, yes, without question.
Mike Chappell of Fox 59 and CBS 4 is our guest. Chap, going back to Bowers for a second, is he – because I'm with you. I think he'd fit perfectly. I think Shane Steichen wants a number 1 tight end option, kind of the same way when he had Goddard in Philadelphia. Like, I think that would mesh perfectly for his offense. Is he the type of player where the Colts would consider moving up 2 spots or 3 spots to go get him?
I would guess no, because you're going to it's costly to move up a couple of spots. We're going to see what it's going to cost when Minnesota's being rumored to go up. Of course, they're going up higher. I don't think they move up for that. Even although I tell you, I remember when round 2 was in 2020 with Jonathan Taylor. Was it 20? The years
I think so.
Get fuzzy. And they're sitting there, and the owner said, they're talking about how much they really like Jonathan Taylor. People forget that Michael Pittman was taken before Taylor, and Taylor was still there a few picks after that, and they were afraid someone was going to take him. And Irsay said, trade up and get him. It's different in round 2 than round 1. But if you really like a guy, would you give up I just don't know what it would take value. A 3, I don't know.
Well, the value changes later in the first, right? When you talk about what's happening up in the top 5, that's a whole different rent district, right?
No question. I think there's more of a chance of them moving back from 15 because of the depth. Now, you're not going to move back and say, well, maybe Bowers will be there. You don't, because he may not be there at 15. But with the depth at corner, with the depth at receiver, I could see them moving back. Not too far, I would hope, but believing that they can get a guy 3 or 4 or 5 spots later that is maybe they like better. Maybe there's a receiver they like that. Remember how Reggie was all over Josh Downs. Now he wasn't a first-round pick, but teams like different things, and so yeah, I could see. I can't see moving up. I could see moving back a little bit. Hopefully, not too much.
Mike, I don't think I've had a chance to, at least on the radio, ask you this question or allow you to elaborate on it. But I know that it was recently, and my apologies if it was more than a week ago, I think it was within the last week, that you had said that you had a long and healthy conversation with Jim Irsay. What can you relay to us from that? Yeah, okay. I just reached out to him about he had tweeted about Dwight Freeney's selection and all that, and so I just reached out. I said, "Hey, Marvin and Edgar, and now Dwight. That shows serious respect." And he called me, and yeah, I was surprised, but it's always good to hear voices. It just is. Chris Ballard gave us a really, really good update at the combine, but to hear Jimmy, who was still in the hospital at the time, hopefully he's been released, sounded really, really strong, and here we are in trying to imply things through a phone. But so this was Mike. This was how long ago that you talked to him? Oh gosh, 10 days ago. It was a Friday. And he was in the hospital at that time, right? Yeah, I think it was a Friday, and then he's supposed to be released like Sunday or Monday, which would have been 2 weeks ago, I think, or a week and a half ago. So yeah, it was. I was surprised. He sounded really, really good. He wouldn't go into depth, which I understood about his struggles over the last couple of months. He just mentioned how he's, because I said people have really been concerned about you. He said, well, there's a lot of rumors and speculation that get out there, and it just from my end, it wasn't the right time to press him on things, and I don't think he would have gotten into it anyway. So no, I was just encouraged that he sounded good. He was very upbeat, and again, it's always good to hear voices in how they sounded. So I was very
optimistic and upbeat after talking to him. Just first from a personal thing because he's a friend, but then too from the sports and the Colts. This is a very important person to this franchise and to the city. So I was very, very pleased.
And along with that, Mike, I'm curious, did you get any impression, is there any way to know this, how much say Jim Irsay will have in the free agency and draft process and how that would be different or the same as years past?
I think it's the same. I really do.
Which is what amount?
Which is input. I think for the most part, he allows Chris Ballard and his staff to do what they do. I mean, he told me a long time ago that now we've had a few deviations over the last couple of years, but you put the right people in place and let them do their jobs. He said, I'm not going to, intrude. Well, he did a couple of times, but that's Jimmy. But no, I think that, Chris does his work and they talk. He and the owner and the head coach, they talk. And I think by and large, the owner allows him to do what he wants to do with his input. I think Chris runs things. He just does. And if the owner wants to offer more, remember a couple of years ago when he kind of put himself into it and they got T.Y. Hilton done because they upped the ante a little bit. But I think by and large, it's the same as it was. Maybe not quite as much over the last month or a month ago because of health issues, but I think he's back to where he's both hands in and it's back to kind of doing what they did in the past. I think he's back running the team with probably some limitations, but I think he's very much still involved with running of this team, including signings.
Chap, what do you think happens with Julian Blackmon?
Oh, if I had to guess, I'd say that he's going to find out that he's overpriced himself, and the best option is to come back here on like a 2-year deal to kind of maybe a 1-year deal doesn't seem right, but a 2-year deal that more on what the Colts want to pay. And again, the one thing players want is the chance to see what they're worth, which Michael Pittman said he wanted to do. And if you get a chance to see what's out there, maybe the team that really wants you. I think maybe his asking price, from my impressions, were a bit steep. So maybe he comes back here on more of a team-friendly deal. But they really need him. I mean, without him, that safety room is really barren.
Do you have any clarity in regards to where the Snead negotiations? Mike Chappell is our guest. L'Jarius Snead, cornerback of the Kansas City Chiefs. They tagged him, and the thoughts was, again, as we talked about to start the conversation, maybe the Colts would be in on him. If there were conversations or when those conversations took place, did it die because more of draft compensation or the idea of what Snead wants from a contract standpoint?
Probably yes. I mean, and again, I'm not saying they're dead.
Sure.
I think it's at some level you say, oh, that's what you want. Not really. Well, we're not willing to go that far. Whether it was compensation, because again, there's 3 parties involved in this. It's Kansas City. They have to accept compensation. They're not going to give him away like the Bears gave away Justin Fields.
Now you're looking at least a second or a third at the starting point, I think.
Maybe a player or two. And then if Snead wants 20 or 22, and again, there's no confirmation of any of this, like what he's asking for. But was it Jalen Johnson got 4 years, $76 million from the Bears, I think it was, and he's probably more accomplished than Snead. So I don't begrudge a player asking for the sun and the moon, but that doesn't mean you're going to get it. So I probably a combination of both. And again, like I say, I would consider it fluid, and things can change, and maybe it gets done later or whatever, or maybe it never gets done. But there's always a snag when something doesn't get done. I mean, that's why it didn't get done. So we'll see which team or which party blinks, if there's any blinking to be done.
Are we kind of now, Chap, though, in the silent period? I hate to say it that way, but In other words, like there's so much noise around free agency. Do things kind of cool off here a little bit? Do you expect any big splash news, say, over the course of the next week?
With the Colts or anybody?
The Colts.
I think that we're in that time to where you get a flurry of activity, and again, the Colts, we've talked about what all they've done and how much and all this stuff. I still think they can get I still think, like we talked earlier, they can get I would say a veteran cornerback. I think it's more likely a safety because I don't think they're going to. They can't go into the draft thinking they're going to get a starting safety. They just can't. That would be crazy. But there's some really quality safeties out there. I could see them bringing safety in here in the next couple of weeks. A guy that people would say, yeah, really, he was pretty good at wherever before. Like bringing in Joe Flacco last week. That's pretty good signing. That takes care of that and all that. So I think the next thing they sign to me is a safety, just because that's the crying need if you look at the roster.
Mike Chappell, CBS 4 and WXIN Fox 59, and On Patrol Live as well, where you can see his work.
I got the last 2 episodes I got to get caught up on. So there's probably something in there that's really going to be pretty cool.
It drives me nuts, though, when they break away, like in the middle of a field sobriety test, like, we got to take a break. You're like, what? No.
You know what's funny is I've had both my hips replaced, and during PT they had me. One of the things you would do is to do that sobriety walk where it's one foot in front of the other, which I still can't do because of the replacements. If I ever left PT and got pulled over 5 minutes later with no booze in me, I'd fail the test because I can't walk straight.
You're going to be the guy on patrol that's like, no, I'm telling you, I've got a fake hip.
That's right. And I'll blow 10 times into your little thingy there. It's going to, 0, but I'd still pass the walking test. So, just be warned.
All right. Mike, we appreciate the time as always. Have a good week.
I'll catch you later.
All right, that is Mike Chappell. Joining us next, guy that played in 2 NCAA tournaments, also has called a lot of basketball and will be able to help us break down the brackets. Former Notre Dame star LaPhonso Ellis next.
Hey, guys, looking for a reason to spend
The glory days of the NCAA tournament. So many good memories over the years. I have told the story a gabillion times, Jimmy, about the fact that when I was a kid, I had juvenile epilepsy. And so when I would have to do what was called a sleep-induced EKG, where I would sleep, and they would then measure like my brain waves, whatever. Shocking that they were moving constantly. And with that, I would have to stay up the entire night the night before for said test, and my mom would always schedule it for the Friday after the opening round of the NCAA tournament, knowing that I would be up all night. I remember watching Wayman Tisdale and Karl Malone go at it in the NCAA tournament. I mean, so many years of watching. My mom would tape it, so I would watch it all night long. It's a magical, magical time, and whether you are somebody that participated in it, like our next guest, broadcasted for them, like our next guest, or simply prognosticated, a lot to talk about. And LaPhonso Ellis, who, of course, you see on Fox, the Big Ten Network, talking about college basketball, joining us on the program. And, LaPhonso, I am going to begin by asking you a Big East question. Is that fair game?
I'll do my best.
Okay. There is a lot of conversation, obviously, just about – and this is what makes the tournament great, like the whole snubs. Oh, this team should have been in, that team should have been in. St. John's. That was a legitimate snub, if you will, or St. John's has legitimate argument?
In light of the strength in my mind of the Mountain West, a lot of those teams that were on the bubble were in jeopardy. And if you don't have a strong non-conference schedule, that's something that came up time and time again with so many different teams, even as we considered the one line with regard to Iowa State. If you don't go out and play anybody in the non-conference and you find yourself on the bubble and you have one of these conferences like the Mountain West that gets 5 to 6 teams in, then you find yourself in jeopardy. And that's the case for not only St. John's but several other teams who found themselves on the bubble late.
Fon, sticking with the Big East, for Marquette, how big of a loss, if it winds up being a loss, / where does the prognostication change for them if star Tyler Kolek is unable to go for the first round or beyond in the tournament?
I think huge. And part of that is, Tyler Kolek, in my mind, is one of the top 5 point guards in the country. His ability to be able to create offense for himself and his teammates unparalleled. Phenomenal in ball screen situations. He's improved as a three-point shooter with deep range. You can post him, and he makes everyone else's job out there on the floor so much easier. Now, it helps having a facilitator at the top, but without him, Oso's job becomes Iguodaro, that is, his job becomes extremely hard because now with him on the floor, now you have a guy who can create offense and a facilitator at the point guard position, and now you have the best passing center in the league, and it really makes it hard to be able to defend both.
Now, LaPhonso, you went to Notre Dame, so your intellect is far surpassing mine, and I know that, right?
Actually not. I was an exception to the rule.
Well, listen, you had to attend classes at Notre Dame just through osmosis alone. Believe me, that beats me. The closest I got to Notre Dame is I knew your teammate Jason Williams, but Jason knows everybody, so that doesn't even help, right? I mean, he knows everybody.
Yes.
Okay,
he's brilliant also.
So let me give you like a theory here, and then I want you to grade it. With your superior intellect, okay. I want you to grade my theory. There's a lot of discussion amongst people this time of year that the problem that Big Ten teams have in the tournament is that the Big Ten is officiated differently. And I have looked into that and thought, you know what? The officials officiating Big Ten games are also officiating in other conferences. They are not exclusive to the Big Ten. But sure. I think there is not necessarily the versatility of style of play in the Big Ten that other leagues have that better prepare them for the tournament. Is that accurate, and is it a challenge for Big Ten teams once they get into the NCAA?
What I've heard as a complaint, and as you guys know, this is my first year covering the Big Ten tournament. I had the pleasure of being there covering Thursday and Friday in studio for the Big Ten Network. And so that was my first time getting a chance to put my eyeballs on how it was officiated and to be able to speak to it. Now, granted, there's a lot of physicality out there, and with regard to the freedom of movement that the officials talked about 3 years ago, that's out of the window. But I have to admit, having seen the Big 12 up close, the Big 12 and the Big 10 are officiated very similarly. There's a lot of contact that goes on from the defense with the guy who has the ball in his hands, and so I don't think there's any distinction between those two leagues. I think those two leagues are the most physical leagues that we have out there, and then I would say the Big East is like a close second. And so I don't necessarily have any issues with that necessarily, but I do agree with you to the extent that I'm trying. There's only a couple teams that really press in the Big Ten, but that's true too. But that's also true for the Big East as well. So again, having had an opportunity to be able to see both leagues officiated with my own eyeballs on it, I'm not sure that there's that much of a disparity between the two. I just think in order to keep it from being a parade to the foul line every 2 minutes, I think they do let a lot of things go that they wouldn't necessarily allow to happen in the league like the ACC that tends to be a little bit more free-flowing in its offense. Certainly not the Pac-12. And I would say the Pac-12 is like the poster child for that. Many of those calls that are let go in terms of physicality in the Big East, Big 10, and the Big 12, those would be foul calls in the Pac-12, and they would be, or I should say Pac-2, and the ACC as well.
Fox Sports and Big Ten Network college basketball analyst LaPhonso Ellis is our guest. Fonz, for the Big Ten viewer, for just the college basketball viewer that watches night in and night out, this won't be a story that necessarily captivates people in the same way as it will for college basketball fans. And I know with their potential second-round draw against Houston, it might only last for one round, but that might be enough. For the casual fan, how much are they going to enjoy watching Keisei Tominaga and Nebraska in that first-round matchup against Texas A&M?
Woo, man, that kid's a flamethrower. It was fun watching. And what happened is Seth Greenberg and I had been in odds about Keisei Tominaga for a couple years because I love guys that can put it in the hole. And Keisei Tominaga, man, once he sees one go in, it's lights out. And he's such a prolific shooter with deep range is I think everyone thinks that he's exclusively a three-point shooter, which he is not. He's really good at navigating ball screens and getting you on his hip. He's got a side step once he's able to get to 15. If you don't cut him off, he's able to get all the way to the basket. And it's interesting, from grade school, high school, college, and having the privilege of having played 11 years in the league, you know that guy is coming back to his left hand. Terrence Shannon, every single left-hander you can think of, and there is absolutely nothing you can do about it. But I will say this. It's not just him. This team, Fred Hoiberg, kind of pivoted this year and wanted to make defense a real focus because they've always been able to score the basketball, just haven't been able to guard anybody. And so with the way that they double team when you're driving baseline, the way that they trap the baseline, they trap the block, they load the weak side in the painted area, the only thing you have available to you is maybe a skip pass and a quick jumper and maybe a drive. And so defensively, they just take you out of all of your action. So it's not just Keisei Tominaga. Rink Mast is a monster to deal with. He's 6'10", can shoot a three ball. He can post. He can drive. Finishes with either hand in the post area. And so you're talking about a team that has great balance on the outside with terrific shooters, and they have a big who you can give it to on the box or out on the perimeter who can make plays. And you complement that with a top 40, I believe, defense. Then you have that game for Houston, should they meet, is not necessarily going to be Houston running away with it because all of those guys can shoot it. There are multiple guys who can put it on the deck and make plays. That won't be an easy game for Houston.
LaPhonso Ellis is our guest. LaPhonso, in terms of the Big Ten, and I'll go with three of them here: Purdue, Illinois, and Wisconsin. Purdue, we know that, all focus is going to be on them. And then Illinois and Wisconsin, deep runs in the Big Ten tournament. In your estimation and experience as a player, does the spotlight that's on you like Purdue has, or the deep run that you make in the Big Ten tournament for Illinois and Wisconsin, does either one of those become a detriment when you have to then stop and reset for the NCAA tournament?
No, but of the three, I feel that Purdue is the most capable of getting to a Final Four, and I actually have them getting to the national championship game against UConn. And part of that is if we go back 3 years with Jaden Ivey's group, that group was an elite offensive group, but Matt Painter couldn't get those guys to guard, and that's what ended up being their downfall when they got into the NCAA tournament. The next year, last year, that team was much improved defensively and willing to sit down in the stands and guard people when someone would get beat. The rotations were solid. They would sink down and take guys off the glass, but they couldn't shoot. This group now possesses both. They can guard you on one end, and they have multiple guys who can knock down three-point shots. Braden Smith is improved, and now you add an additional guy who can defend out on the perimeter in Lance Jones. Now that solves that issue is if they run up against the team who has superior speed on the perimeter, that's really been the thorn in the heel or thorn in the side for Purdue. Now you got a guy like Lance Jones who can sit down and guard without compromising offense because he can make open threes, he can get in the lane, he's got a nice little float game and a willing passer as well. So Wisconsin, Illinois making deep runs, Illinois winning the Big Ten championship with the way that Illinois plays. With Marcus Damask, man, obviously can make he's not a great three-point shooter, but can make open threes. But the way that he plays bully ball at his position, backing you all the way down from the wing and be able to create offense for himself from there. And then with the way Terrence Shannon, whether you're back, all five guys back defensively in transition, can get to the rack and get to the foul line and improve three-point shooter. I like all three of those teams to get to the second weekend, but I believe that this is the year for Purdue to get to the national championship game.
Fonz, I know that you're only locked in on the Big Ten and the Big East, but real quickly before I let you go, is there still residual rooting interest in Grand Canyon, and how is Walter Ellis enjoying the G League?
Oh, for sure. Grand Canyon's our squad. I got a chance to text with Bryce Drew over the last couple of days and just congratulating those guys for winning another WAC championship and the opportunity to be able to go into the NCAA tournament again this year. And I think this group's a little bigger, a little bit more athletic. I would argue that last year's team could shoot it better, but I think finally he has a team that can actually win a game in the NCAA tournament. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if they won their first round game. With regard to Walter, he's having a great experience with the Grand Rapids Gold, who's the Denver Nuggets G League affiliate. I'm honored with a reduced schedule to having seen them play about 12 times already. Looking forward to getting a chance to see them again this weekend. And the opportunity for a guy who graduated in 3 years from Bucknell with 2 years of eligibility left and having gone to Grand Canyon, had a magical run to the NCAA tournament, and to cap that off with being drafted 15th in the G League draft and making contributions many nights throughout the season and having an opportunity to live as a pro. I couldn't be happier for him because that dude's gone through a lot of adversity, including losing his sister last year, my only daughter, last year on July 1st, and to be able to have the mental fortitude to deal with that along with some injuries and all of those things that he had, and to be able to concentrate and focus when the opportunity was given to him. I just continue to be impressed, not only because he's my son, but because I love people who can deal with adversity and come through on the high side, and by the grace of God, he's done that to this point.
Well, obviously, continued condolences in one regard, and then kudos for strength in the other. And then the other thing, LaPhonso, I'm confused by this. Is it antelopes or just lopes now? Are we just going with lopes for Grand Canyon? Did they drop the anta part?
Yeah, no, it's still antelopes, but to your point, it's lopes. And it's interesting because even when you hear it on different news outlets, it's lopes or antelopes. But no, it's fully antelopes. They just use the lopes.
Okay, well, there you go. So you got to be hip like the kids, Jimmy. Just go with lopes.
Got to stay cool, Jake. Got to stay cool.
That's right. I'm not smart and I'm not cool, so it's antelopes for me, baby.
He is LaPhonso Ellis, college basketball analyst for Fox Sports and Big Ten. Fonz, always great to catch up. Enjoy the tournament. Enjoy Walter Ellis down in the G League the rest of the way, and we'll talk to you soon.
Honored to join you guys. Blessings to you and your family.
You as well. You can follow him on Twitter at FonzLovesHoops, one of the best out there, breaking it all down for us.
So it is antelopes. I thought it was antelopes.
There you go. Vindication for you.
That's right. Are there a lot of there are probably a lot of antelopes in the Grand Canyon, right?
I would think so, yeah.
They get all the way down to the bottom, and then they're like, wait a minute, we got to walk back up? There's no – that's my understanding is not the most fun thing. Jimmy's going to try to find picks next.
Do you need air conditioning service and need to find a local well-trained expert? You can
Today's plays of the day. First in Cavaliers, Indiana Pacers will take over 29.5 total points plus assists for Tyrese Halliburton. In that same game, over 1.5 blocks for Miles Turner. Later tonight at 7:40, give me the Miami Heat at plus money on the money line over Philadelphia. Those are your plays. Eddie has none. Hopefully tomorrow for the first
John
one, we'll
looks
get some.
stunned. John just
Jimmy
walked
just
in.
cleared his throat here.
Yeah, I missed the cough button. That's all.
I don't know if you know this or not, John. The only play I have is we are actually wagering on whether or not Jimmy's cold's gone by September. Over under is Labor Day, right?
Yeah.
It's been brutal.
I think it's allergies.
I may have to take the over on that, yeah.
I think it's allergies.
Hey, the over-under on this weekend sucking.
The over-under on number of times you're going to go off on the NCAA selection committee.
Yep. Today. I told you guys last week when they lost that it was going to be over. I just didn't know that it was going to be as an excruciating experience as it was. I mean, it was just endless amounts of nut kicking going on.
Yeah, it's
basically from Thursday through Sunday. I didn't know we were going to have to go through that.
It sucked.
And then the end result's going to be coach is going to leave, players going to leave. So we're going to be on the whole 10-year plan again. And see, that's what people don't realize why it's so important. You know that song from Eminem, Lose Yourself? Like, he really didn't have to lose himself. He got another opportunity after he gagged, right?
Right.
But if you're Indiana State out of the Mo Valley, you get one stinking opportunity, and that's it. So, Chuck, take that. Lose yourself in that, Chuck, magnificently.
He had mom's spaghetti all over him, right?
Yeah. See, I mean, he gagged the first time, so he got 2 chances.
That's true. That's true.
You
All
only
right.
get 1 shot.
John's up next. He gets 1 shot. And then he'll get another one tomorrow. Buddy's up next. We'll be back with you tomorrow at noon. More numbers to give away tomorrow. Lou Malnati's on board. Lou Malnati's prize pack for our numbers game. We'll be back with you at noon tomorrow.
Jefferson Shreve stepped up to fight when no one else would.